So I would like to begin first by just kind of clarifying what virtual reality is. So virtual reality, we call VR usually, and it's a way for people to experience something that they probably don't really have the opportunity to experience. And for many people, you might think, oh, well, that's like video games, right? Like you can pretend to be an elf in Lord of the Rings and experience what that would be like, which would probably be really cool. But there are some ways to integrate it into an adult education classroom and even generally within an adult education program, depending on your role. So what brought me to VR? Um, I am friends with a lot of people who use VR within their classrooms, and they're typically using it with undergraduate um, English 101 students, using it as a way to have students experience something and then write about it, right? That shared experience. And I thought, that's really interesting. And because I love adult ed, I thought, how could I bring that to my students? How could I leverage that technology and make it something that is worthwhile and meaningful for students? I wanted to do more than just have students have a shared experience and write about it. I wanted to see if there was a way to connect it to their goals. And for many of my students, those goals are to get into a career, to upskill or to reskill. However, most of the classes I teach it are at night. So that really took away the opportunity for us to do in-person field trips. And I thought maybe there's a way to use VR to supplement that. And as I began to dig through it, I began to see, you know what? There are opportunities to break through some barriers here as well. So some of the barriers that my students have are transportation barriers. Right? Maybe they can get to campus because they are carpooling with somebody who's in a different class. However, if we do a field trip, they don't have a way to get there, right? And maybe they don't want to share a ride with somebody in class, right? Maybe that makes them uncomfortable. So with virtual reality, they don't need to go anywhere physically. Secondly, I have so many caregivers and parents within my classes. And if you're a parent or have parents in classes or caregivers for elderly family or families with certain needs, you understand that life calls to you when it calls to you, and you have to just pivot. And I was seeing those students having to pivot in class and perhaps miss a class where we had a field trip and they missed out on that experience. So virtual reality allows everyone to have that experience at different times. It also helps with social anxiety. So if you're somebody who gets a little uncomfortable when you have to drive somewhere and you use Google Street View to see exactly what it looks like and where the entrance is and where you have to park, or maybe that's just me. It can help um, to curb some of that as well and to say, this is what we're going to see, or you don't have to actually step into a building. You can experience this in a safe space. Additionally, virtual reality can be used for linguistic support, and I'll touch on that in a few slides, and especially that workforce network connection. So if we're thinking about how to work more closely with career technical education or with those career pathways, there's a real opportunity to get students using virtual reality. The last few in-person conferences I attended, there were virtual reality interactive career technical education booths there. And I know from my career tech friends that that's a big push in career in CTE. So being able to introduce our students to that on the adult education side is going to become essential. So what exactly does this mean? Because virtual reality has levels of investment, I'll call it. So today I'm really going to focus on that minimum investment. It's minimum investment. It's also not very immersive, but they're called 360-degree videos and images. You don't need any new equipment to do it. You can do it on your computer. You can use a smartphone to access it. You don't encounter a lot of hidden costs, which sometimes I'm working with students who are um, have emerging literacy. They're just starting on that literacy journey in English. And the last thing I want to do is have them connect to something where there are going to be pop-ups that are going to try to get money from them. So this hasn't been an issue with the 360 videos. The downside is it's not completely immersive, right? They don't feel like they are there because they are able to, again, look up from the phone or the video and see the rest of the world there. For some students who um, maybe have experienced trauma, that might be a good thing, right? Um, they can still look around and see that safe space of the classroom or the program. And then as you work your way up, it gets more immersive and it gets more expensive. So you have to consider what level of investment you want for your classroom or your program. And if you're just starting out, my recommendation is to experiment with the lesser of the investments to understand how you might want to use it, where those drawbacks are, and what your objectives are. And from there, you can begin those conversations with those who um, hold the checkbook on which one of these further up options might be appropriate. But for the past few years, I've been working with those 360-degree videos and images, and you will see some of those today. So how exactly can you use VR for, let's say, for career exploration or for workplace readiness? So again, you can offer virtual field trips. Um, you can offer virtual field trips to places that are not within your local area. You could also work to create those 360 videos yourself with a local business. If it's an instance of, they don't want a class coming into their workplace, it's a safety issue, there's still a way for them to make that connection with your program. And if you work with English language learners, perhaps you really want to build that focus on vocabulary. You want to preview what it is they're going to see. Maybe looking for OSHA signs, whatever might be built into your purpose, your curriculum. Virtual reality can also be used for augmenting and building those soft skills, working through interviews, and working on nonverbal communication. So by showing a video or an image, even a 360 image of people sitting around a boardroom table or people who are sitting there for an interview and actually getting a peek of what that looks like, what it looks like to sit there in an interview, for them to look at that image and practice their questions and their answers. And then, as I said, career technical education has the ability to actually do skills practice. Um, things like being able to use a saw, but doing so virtually so that nobody loses any fingers if they're like me and don't have a very good grasp of where the outer limbs are when there's a reason I'm working in education where I can't get hurt. But they also have things like the most recent conference I went to where you could help birth a cow through virtual education. So there is a wide range, but that investment is a huge financial investment. So that is most likely going to be happening on that CTE side, um, where there is a bit more money than in adult education. So I'd be remiss if I didn't actually give you an opportunity to see what virtual reality looks like in a 360 environment. So we're going to start by looking at a 360 image, something that's stagnant. And if you are joining this webinar on your computer, I recommend that you use your phone, open up your camera app, and when you do so, you should have the opportunity um, to open this up on your phone. I did put the link in the chat in case you would prefer to do this all on your computer. It's a little bit of a different experience between the two, and I'll explain it, but let me give you 1 second to get connected. Perfect. Let me switch my screen so that you can see. So right here, it just looks like a plain image. And once you click on it, it will open it up in 360-degree format. So what exactly does 360-degree format mean? It means if you're on a computer, you can click and slide that cursor around to look around what I believe is a radiography room. You can look up at the ceiling. You can look down at the floor. So you can examine what is on these surfaces, looking at how sterile the environment looks. It gives an opportunity for students who want to go into healthcare to say, okay, so this is the environment I would be working in, right? This is what it would look like. These are the different tools I would need to learn how to operate. Now, if you're on a phone, sometimes 360 images will actually allow you to just pick up your phone and rotate it as if you are spinning around in a circle and experience that way. Otherwise, you'll, have to slide your finger on the screen. These images work on computers, tablets, phones, Chromebooks, anything that can connect to the internet, you can interact with it. And after the presentation, you'll get a list with a bunch of links that provide just some starting images for different career fields if you want to look through them, and general websites that house these images. There are also web-based programs like Nearpod, which people can use to create lessons where these sorts of experiences can be embedded right within your lesson. So students never have to navigate away from the screen. Okay. You can continue to look at that at your leisure, but for now, I am going to share with you um, a 360 video. And the 360 video, I think, has a lot of potential for programs. Um, Even just getting students within the doors of your program, showing them what it looks like inside, giving them a tour where they can look around. And so I'm going to let you navigate to this, but if you would prefer, I am just also going to share it up on my screen really quickly, just a snippet so that you can see. It's going to have some fun music to it, and it's fairly loud. So I'm going to show you right here. This is housed on YouTube, and it is a 360 video of a mold making factory.
Welcome to the VR tour of AIS Technologies Group and our parent company, Active Industrial Solutions.
Being a CNC machinist has been a great experience for me. I remember
I'm going to mute for a second so I can show you. Here, you'll notice on the screen, it's a hand. You can click and you can rotate during any one of these moments in the video. If I saw something interesting, I could actually pause the video and continue to look around. Say, okay, I want to be a CNC machinist. This is what it's going to look like, right? This is the environment. I can say, okay, I notice he's got safety goggles on, right? He's got closed-toed shoes, and you can view everything about this, which is fascinating, right? And then you can continue on the video and continue moving around it as if you are there watching this happen. And I can already see some ideas within the chat of how you could integrate this into a classroom, how you could use this. Um, and it really helps students to engage. There's something really nice about being able to see what it looks like, as opposed to just talking about or having students do the research on what is it to be a CNC machinist, but instead to show them that, allow them to look around. They get really lost in it and they notice such interesting things. So perhaps you're still in a program that's at least partially virtual. Can you still do this? Absolutely. I do want to just lay out a few considerations because I have implemented this in a fully remote classroom through Zoom. You have to think about the digital literacy of your students. So in the beginning, if you're implementing this, you might be really having to teach how to use it rather than digging into that content and into the exploration portion. So build in that time. Most people have smartphones or laptops that can handle these VR images. So again, I'd recommend sticking with the 360 if you're doing remote so that you're not having to deal with lending out expensive equipment. And again, you can do that by kind of linking it into Nearpod, or as I did right here, just posting QR codes or links for students to access it. And then really the big one is your comfort zone, right? Because in a remote environment, you're going to be tech support in addition to whatever role it is that you have. So it really requires that you maybe play with it a little bit, but if I just want to say, be prepared to be flexible. Don't give up after the first roadblock. Um, it really is a worthwhile endeavor to start using within the classroom. So what are some other considerations? Cost, right? You need to make sure that if you're doing the more expensive VR, there are a lot of costs beyond just buying the goggles. There are often subscriptions that have to be paid for. Secondly, equity. So when using those 360 videos, it's not necessarily equitable to students who might have vision difficulties. And then third, if you are using the expensive goggles, how are you going to clean them between people using them? That's something to consider that you don't need to worry about if you're using the computer or the phone version of it. And then the fourth one, which is becoming less and less of a consideration, is that there used to be a pretty small community of support around virtual reality and adult education. That is changing. So hello, community, right? Um, Feel free to reach out to me at any time. And, just doing a Google search for adult education and VR will yield some really interesting things. Okay. So just to lastly connect it back to students on career pathways, you can create 360 videos and images that focus on industries that appeal to your students and that are tailored to your local environment. And VR can be used by career transition specialists within programs, as well as teachers and administrators. And, this is something I am really excited about is even virtual walkthroughs of community resources, right? As a student has food insecurity, how about a virtual walkthrough of the local food bank or how to access what it is that they need so that they can focus on learning, so they can focus on their future instead of worrying about that present.